So this video is just taking up the answers to the applications of adding and subtracting polynomials, just in case you had trouble with them and you need some further explanation. So question 1 asks you to come up with a simplified expression for perimeter. Recall that perimeter of a triangle is just add up all the sides. And so that's exactly what we're going to do for question number 1a. We're just going to add all the sides. So we're going to do 4x plus 7 plus 5x plus 3 plus 3x plus 2, and the order in which you add these does not make a difference. This, however, is not a simplified expression. So to simplify, we need to collect like terms. So we need to put all the x terms together, and by now, if you're quite good at that, you can just skip the step that I'm doing right now, and then you're going to put all the constants together. And now you're going to simplify, and so that becomes 12x plus 12. And this is your simplified expression for the perimeter. For part B, it says, well, what if x was 4? What would the perimeter be? And one thing you could do is you could replace each of these with 4 and figure out what each side is and then add them up. But a little bit easier is to just use your expression that you found in part A. So if x is 4, all we're going to do is substitute, replace the x with 4, and then follow Bedmas and get our answer. So 12 times 4 is 48. 48 plus 12 is 60. Questions always come up with these about whether you should do a sentence answer or not, and I usually do. At bare minimum, you should do a sentence answer for at least B. You can also do one for A, so I might say, therefore, an expression for the perimeter is 12x plus 12, and the perimeter is 60 centimeters, don't forget your units, when x equals 4 centimeters. So that could be an example of a sentence answer that you might use. So question 2 is identical, except now instead of a triangle, it's a rectangle. So you could do the same thing that we just did, or what I'm going to actually show you is using the distributive properties. So remember, perimeter of a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So for part A, we could actually use that. So we can do 2 times 2x minus 3. Plus 2 times 3x plus 5. Again, this is not simplified. We need to now distribute, so we're going to take the 2 and multiply by 2x and get 4x. We're going to take the 2 and multiply by minus 3, and we're going to get minus 6. Then we're going to take this 2 and multiply by 3x. And then finally, 2 multiplied by 5, and you're going to collect your like terms. Again, if you're comfortable, you can skip that step and go straight to the answer of 10x plus 4. And then for part B, you're going to replace the x with 7 and then follow the order of operations. So 10 times 7 is 70. And 70 plus 4 is 74. And then you could write your sentence answer. For time, I'm not going to do that, but you saw an example of what I wrote for the last question. Question 3 is definitely a lot more thinking involved. We're only going to look at 3A because 3A and 3B are very similar, so you won't do them any differently. But before we do 3A, let's just look very briefly at, what would you do if I gave you, say, this question that said, this is 8 and this is 6. What's this side, knowing that your perimeter is 20? Well, probably what most of you would do is you would say, well, I know that I need to add all sides and that equals the perimeter. So if 8 plus 6 is 14, then to get the missing side, I just need to do 20 minus 14, and that will be, so 8 plus 6 is 14, and then 20 minus that gives me 6, so the missing side must be 6. We're going to use that exact same strategy for this question. The only difference is that this one on the left has numbers and the one on the right has letters and numbers. So it's got algebra. But we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to add. So our first step here was to do 8 plus 6. So we're going to do that here. Let's add our 2x plus 4y minus 3 plus our negative x plus 7y plus 4. When we add those, 2x plus negative x is x, 4y plus 7y is 11y, and negative 3 plus 4 is positive 1. Then, what did we do next? We did the perimeter minus that answer, so that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to do the perimeter of 5x plus 3y minus 2, take away what the other two sides added up to. Make sure here, though, you're really, really careful. You must use brackets because that negative sign does not just apply to the x. It will get distributed to all terms. And that's where there's like a really common error, is forgetting to use brackets. So now we're going to subtract these. Remember, this is like, if you want to think of it as like a little minus 1 that gets distributed, you can think of it that way. So negative 1 times x, that becomes negative x. This will become minus 11y and minus 1. So be really careful with your signs. Then you collect like terms. So 5x minus x is 4x. 3y minus 11 is negative 8y. And negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. And if you wanted to do more steps for that, that's totally fine. So 3b, I don't have it in this take-up video, but it will be done exactly the same way. It just has one more side, that's all. And then this last one, again, is actually very similar to the one we just did. This answer here, 4x squared plus 9x plus 2, is the entire area. So the area of the big rectangle. That's the big rectangle. And then this x squared plus 4x plus 3 is the area of the small rectangle. So again, if I gave you this question and I said, okay, this area is 4 and this whole area is 12, what's the shaded region? You would say, well, 12 minus 4 is 8, so the shaded region must be 8. So you do the big minus the small. We're going to do the exact same thing here. We're going to do the big, 4x squared plus 9x plus 2 minus the small, x squared plus 4x plus 3. And again, be really careful here. Because we're subtracting expressions, we have to use brackets. And then we just go ahead and we subtract. So this becomes 4x squared plus 9x plus 2. And again, if it's easier for you, you can think of this as distributing the minus 1. And so be very careful because the signs will change. This becomes negative x squared. This becomes negative 4x. And this becomes negative 3. And then you collect like terms. So 4x squared minus 1x squared is 3x squared. 9x minus 4x is 5x. And 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And that's your answer.